Hello, everyone in Zoom. I am Henry Crawford, and welcome to the September 2021 edition of Poets versus the Pandemic. Tonight, we're featuring Hiram Larew reading from his new book, Mud, a Jar. And as a special treat, Hiram has brought along his voice artist, T.A. Niles, who voices the audio book, Mud, a Jar, and will be reading some of the poems from that book right here on PvP. After that, we will be treated to two wonderful guest poets, Lauren Camp and Carolyn Joyner. So I think we have a real good night coming up. And joining me tonight is the co-host is WordWorks founder Karen Alanier and our latest member of the Cafe Muse team, Majda Gama, an excellent poet in her own right and latest member of our team. Now, I want to thank everyone who has supported our program. It's all about providing a reading space for poets whose books have come out during this time of the pandemic. And I'd also like to thank WordWorks for making all of this possible. A couple more things. First, and most importantly, we want you to purchase the poets' books. So from time to time, I'll put a link into the chat that will take you to the places where you can purchase the books of each of our poets tonight. We also have a donation button on that page, so don't feel shy about donating to WordWorks and our program. We at WordWorks and Cafe Muse will thank you wholeheartedly for your contributions. I'm also going to put into the chat the link where you can follow all of our WordWorks readings online, sign up on the registration form, and you will be on our mailing list to get all of the Zoom links. Now, if you want to ask a question of our poets, feel free to drop a question into the chat, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we have time. A couple more things. Please join us on Monday, October 4, 2021, when Cafe Muse Online will present our own Leah Johnson and Kiki Petrosino. And we'll be back here again with PvP on October 20, 2021, with a special program dedicated to the anthology, This Is What America Looks Like. So let me say a few words about Hiram Larew. His poems have appeared widely in such publications as Poetry South, Contemporary American Voices, Amsterdam Quarterly, Best Poetry Online, the Iowa Review, and Clock Radio, and he's been nominated for 4 Pushcart Prizes. His newest collection is Mud, a Jar, which he shall be reading from here tonight, and he's involved with several poetry initiatives, including Poetry X Hunger, the Poetry Poster Project, Voices of Woodlawn, the last being a collective program of poetry, art, and music about the lives of the enslaved community at historic Woodlawn Plantation in Virginia. Hiram has long been a friend of mine and a friend to poetry. His writing keeps getting better while always retaining the same degree of honesty and integrity that marks this extraordinary poet. So, without more, let's bring to the PvP stage Hiram Larew and T.A. Niles. Go for it, guys.
Thank you, Henry. I want to certainly thank Henry, Karen, Majda for organizing this reading and allowing us the space to present. I certainly want to extend a hearty thanks to Carolyn Joyner and Lauren Camp for being willing to join in the reading this evening. I think your ears are going to be delighted as you hear them present their poetry. And I want to especially thank T.A. Niles from New Mexico, who is the audiobook narrator of some renown. He has recorded fiction, nonfiction, a spiritual booklet, a memoir, and now a book of poetry. He has read, recorded, narrated, and we've posted the audiobook that he's presented, Mud, a Jar, as it is available now online. I wanted to see if he'd be willing to read with me so that you'd have a chance to enjoy his voice as much as I do, as he interprets some of these poems that appear in Mud, a Jar. So we're going to be I'll read a poem, then he'll read a poem, then I'll present a poem, then he will present a poem, and so on during our 15 minutes at the mic. So to begin, I'd like to start with a poem that is all about those amazing days that we call adolescence. This poem is titled Tin Roof, and it first appeared in North of Oxford. Tin Roof. When I was 17, apples were busheled in baskets, and I was the straw under all of those red round spirits. All the light coming through the shed's planks was slanted across them, and every wasp in the world hovered just above them. Yes, whatever apples were, I wanted to be. And in a way, when I was 17, apples ate me. What was to become my heart was really some wild, weedy patch in the orchard back then. And any sheen reflecting off their skins or the barn's tin roof was all that I wanted to be. When I was 17, with every seed buried deep inside, even my gangly gaze was humming. And somehow I knew, before tasting anything tartly sweet, that that was what I wanted to be, right there in the baskets. And now T.A. Niles.
Thank you so much, Hiram, and thanks to everyone that made this possible. This is truly an honor to be able to do this, so involved in the work I have been. I am going to read Muddy, which the survey I did of all my friends showed up as #1 that they would like to hear. Muddy first appeared in A New Ulster. I wish I could tell which of my friends will be friends forever, and who will just walk off whistling into the woods. Which ones, I wonder, will chance choose for keeps from the randoms? So many slip away without saying much, and others drop off when I throw a fit. And some turn sour soon after ripening. Walls as tall as 65 also make it harder to keep in touch. The starts and stops of friendship are muddy mysteries. So I guess there's no way to predict who will end up being there after all, waving the checkered flag and grinning.
Thanks, T.A. This next piece is in praise of early morning fields. It's titled Mud Ajar, and it first appeared in Jonosco. Mud Ajar. Love hay as daybreaks toss, and fill full barrows with Alleluia. Push, pull, soggy meadows to hallow be. Green or boots high raise the low to Alleluia. Beckoned find the ditches or blend these clouds as firsts of all. For mud ajar, for breakfast fields and feast of heaven takes, where planks sing, swing to Alleluia. Here where beaks are barns that loop through when, as rain lifts praise on trill of rakes.
And now I will read radio, which came up second in our survey. And radio first appeared in Hedge Apple. That was so long ago that it's hard to even pinch. Since then, whole hills have turned the other way. And most babies from such times have left home and come back married. Yes, trees from back then are now 2x4s. So why bother with such things that should be forgotten? Why let years ago punch me flat? Why, oh why, should all these all of a sudden sounds of a nearly lost song spook me? I'll tell you why. Because that tune this morning cried out like a ghost and slipped me right back to when my heart had just barely started. That croon reached out and grabbed me by my shoreleys and kicked me flat on my dammits. Kicked me all the way back to those days when I was fool smack in love, like a thrown, cursing glass of milk.
Thanks, TA. This next to last piece is all about the roiling, rough times that we're living through. It's titled Succotash. My country, so poly, so jack of all trades and confetti. This yard sale of nations with ditches of weeds and cornfields split open. The tar in my whistles. My country, the talons and scars after oozing. The sparklers, my country, that wake up but ransack what happened. And broad beans that dazzle the mud. My country, all arrows shot heaven with swearing. My country, in sparrows, gone haywire and hobo. The screen doors to wisdom slammed shut and gone off too, with maps left behind. My country, these blackboards of silence and misspells. My country, so flies over pie. I just have one more, and it's a fairly short piece. It's a very short piece. It's a benediction. It's the last piece in Muddajar. And it's a song of sorts to what I call a world of wonder. It's titled This If. I fly myself far as can be, like windows do or doors beyond. This reaching sky, these trees of all that's gone or coming to, and rounded beams. I fly as how open is, and porches swing up to towards, each rhyme undone, to tell of fill and full where blue is now. I fly this if, but also more, where clouds love rakes or fields are curls, to forever where, or halos fling my scattered firsts. This day that rings. Thanks so much to Henry and to T.A. Niles.
Thank you, Hiram. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hiram and TA. Batman and Robin, I think they've got to go. I think we've got a new dynamic duo here. T.A. Niles and Hiram Larew, the poetic dynamic duo. All right. Let me say a few words about Lauren Camp. She is the author of 5 books. Most recently, Took House, winner of the American Fiction Award in Poetry and distinguished favorite of the Independent Press Award. Other honors include the Dorset Prize and finalist citations for the Arab American Book Award, Housatonic Book Award, and the New Mexico, Arizona Book Award. Her poems have appeared in the Kenyon Review, Prairie Schooner, Witness, Poet Lore, Beloit Poetry Journal, and the Los Angeles Review. And her work has been translated into Mandarin, Turkish, Spanish, Serbian, and Arabic. So, to me, when I read Lauren's poems, she has one foot on this earth and the other in heaven. She elegantly synthesizes culture, wit, and wonder. So be prepared for a stunning reading by this awesome poet. Fasten your seatbelts and get ready. This is Lauren Camp.
Thank you so much, Henry and Karen, Majda, Hiram, for the invitation. It's just terrific to be here. I haven't read from the book in a little while, and so it's exciting to come back to it. But before I do, I want to read one new poem, and I'll end with one new poem. This poem is called Identity. Deep August, within a steamy human stew, in a metal train, and the spice of hundreds of tired workers, fleshly and ash, the curls and eye of them near my lips, my waist. I was 19, taking that subway from my small job where I filled brochures with small bones of sentences. I was fixed long in this stretch, underground, lost in the black shoes and curves, and didn't know much. Hunger or greed was hardly myself, swaying along, hearing the tongues and oily bore of the brink. But my wallet, I suddenly knew, had been taken from my little red purse that stretched and clicked open. Credit card, checkbook, library card, photos, each precious thing. And I got off at some platform, raged and cried, nothing but gray concrete, then crossed back through the sideways doors and got on the next train into the terrible, familiar machine of all of us, hemmed to each other, and went home. Thank you. So Took House came out in August of 2020, smack in the middle of the pandemic, which is a crazy time to release a book. And also an exciting time because I got to read for audiences that I would not have been able to reach otherwise. So it was sort of lovely to get the chance to share these complicated poems with people in other places. So I'm going to start with the second poem in the book. It's called Find the Color of Survival. I want to talk about what I believe is beautiful. And this is complicated by all the oil of that year. The muscle of my mind was worn out. I was painting everything at once, painting until the impulse died and began again. I tended to let days scatter to bruises on canvas. Absolute color, the temperature I tolerated, and my hands the only source of compassion. My eyes stayed on the symbols of other artists' corners and saw as they spread to a world that existed through another parking lot, a skein of grasses. 4 shades of green could have and bend the eye. Even in excess, I always see the most trivial details. Even then, I was always sure a return to heaven's brightness. These are the matters for which there are no limits. How far imagination commands, and I splendored over it. I starved to praise, contented in the ways of light and bed and silhouette, because I had sacrificed to muddy palms and art inscribed with truth and the dominion of hues, the breathless blue. I believe you'll see in every image pleasure and 20 different senses, every past in the right and wrong place. So many times, no one can tell if they saw us. A woman tying a black apron brought the cutlery to our table. At home, I lifted a broad brush to each sorrow. One day soon, every form will be transparent. But first, with you, I'm looking at even what I cannot stand to see. Leather world, this bird, this sky. I came here from temporary and perpetual rages, the whole sky of wind. Secret birds take the ruin of garden. Hail carefully cuts out the unseen side, the open veins. Dirt offers its fragrance through flooding. When the nest falls, I open the twigs and find only crickets with their gasps and clicking. For 19 years, I have been driving toward reason, or into the sinews of city, the pileup on the interstate, the drums of hydrochloric acid near intersections, the suspicion. Where does it end? I've always understood what can't be said, but the man who complained of kindness had to apologize. There's almost no dialogue between life's various promises. Such endeavor all of these seasons. Wind pulls on one wing, then a next, and a raptor flies crooked through its mandolin language. Suddenly, everything verified, cloud without end. So the book has three different elements that feed into the story of the whole. And it's a way I like to work, if I can, is to sort of coalesce different things together and to see what kind of new challenges it brings up for me. The book has a main storyline of a relationship, and then it has poems of raptors, birds of prey, and ekphrastic poems. And within the relationship poems, it has these 3 homeostasis poems because everybody needs some balance. So I'll read you one of those. It's called Homeostasis Night. When I can't sleep, I ask you to tell me a story, though I am all grown up. And I listen to what it was like to be a boy that 1 year in Southern Illinois, how you loved snow and your bike, and where your house was at the end of a lane, and how you found that house because of a man at a gas station. But then I fall asleep and don't know what happens next. My husband's favorite poem. He asks for it all the time. Okay, this next one, I just want to say a little something about this next one, because certain times I find as a poet, when I am writing about something that feels so challenging for me to get a handle on, but like understanding first intellectually or intuitively, then the poems are like, it requires the poems to come out a little differently. And that is true in this poem for sure. It's called Gin. The day's first gin is throat dry, sharp and pure, ice, still whole when he gets another. He drinks until the angle of half light is lost, until the glass is asleep by the door and the glass empty and the glass carried. The mind floats and widens beyond anything biological. The mind with its musical light never surfacing, the never mind, infused in an abyss deeper than the mind, until his body is only this, and fleeing the body within his body. And the damage is also parched like this. I like Zoom applause. I like the snaps and claps. It's very, very appealing. Okay, I live in New Mexico, and as much as I spend time looking at the clouds and the sky and the light, I also spend a lot of time looking at the raptors. This next poem is called Sharp-Shinned Hawk. Days are barely at zero. Take wind shear as the palace, pleasure layer, depth. The bird raises its head from a chest soft with down. From above, the land is scars, sown with narrow eyes. Steady, steady. It swerves and lurks in hackberry, soapberry, mesquite, as if one could ride a sun to luck. One does, behold. Between flaps and gliding, it nests inside some tighter aspen branches, eats first crickets as small delicacy before its centered eyes triangulate on songbirds, sparrow, thrush in gentle grass. Bounty, bounty, bounty. I want to read one more poem from Took House and then one new poem. So I came to poetry from a career as a visual artist, and it was very thrilling to me to put in ekphrastic poems into this collection. This next poem is inspired by the wall drawings of Sol LeWitt. The drawings themselves, if you've never seen them, they are not an actual object, they are directions, which means that every single place that they were exhibited, they're a little different. So the directions guide the person executing the artwork, but they don't completely formally decided. So that means every place gets the same idea, but it looks different. If you could see it many times and it would look different. So the poem has two voices, the director voice, or the person giving the directions, and the person answering it. It's called Draw a Box. On the white wall of your heart, a box. Without a ruler, I draw. Within the box, a word, anything you choose. I write, moan, lace, seed pod, stumble. Draw a circle that reaches the edges but does not exit the box. Then a vertiginous series of lines rising over a valley. To the east, sun tips up as though in a memory. Watch someone you know approach the box from the northeast edge by the wooden bridge. Quickly draw a door on your box. Wearing black silk gloves, a small, beautiful woman reaches for the door. Listen to the cerulean sound of her swallows. The tones swoop forward and settle on the ceiling. When she exits, watch her walk up the steep hill to a brick house you hadn't seen before. Under her arm, she holds an old delphinium she found in the box. Turn off the lights in your box. Feel the missing sides of the box. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you again, Hiram. TA, it's wonderful to hear you. Someday we'll have to get together somewhere in New Mexico. And Carolyn, I'm super excited to hear you. This last poem is a poem of family history, ancestry. I've tried to be fair to both sides. I write about both ends of my family, although I write more about my father's side. This is on my mom's side. It's called Statehood. Understanding Emma Lamb can't be done. I hold the urge to visit the past a court case from 1942. The evidence duly made, and whatever that means, what sort of song is this to live in the history books? Appeal and error, it said, and for hours I followed the judgment to a per curiam, agonizing its theme. Nothing is free, the law states, and so Emma, a common law wife, the first begrudged woman in stone-bruised Oklahoma, had her future given away. How did she keep calm when the claim was read? Emma walked to the courthouse in a house dress that February, her man dead 3 years by then. Winter was bubbling, her face worn to weary. All she had was the land they kept, a meager pantry, the bed she climbed into, persistent for decades. Or did they take that too? Was she nobody's mother? They murmured her name on the roadside. My interest started with a photo of a building in a town once coaxed to bright hinges by a railroad, newly laid, rich and muscular. Sequential. The photo was sent by one of many cousins and boasted my mother's family name. I knew nothing of it. So I texted it on to another relative who took me back further. Where does the shape of that past hold in my body? The building was brown with large windows. I forget if I'd seen this image before, but it was a Sunday I'd set for myself to realign under the mulberry tree, to turn lazy. I began to study this Emma who tried to speak up and was decried to a sentence. An almost wife or unsharpened wife to my great-granduncle, who himself was an empty space before other deaths I hardly remember. The frontier was changeless. When I asked why they'd cheat her, my cousin said horses and money and an edge of religion and the green field of shame, and her words climbed into the nest I'd set up in the leaves. I couldn't make sense of the ruined house, the love stained to its creases. Well, my cousin said, Betsy and Mama told me, and I believe their truth. And so it is the truth that Emma left that courtroom in Haskell, Oklahoma, and the rocky land flecked around her. I imagine her saying her name as half a name, loosely tied to a man she knew whole, naming each other thing, but not the mistakes she could make. This woman I can't find a lick about. I think her face is dry and dry and dry, and her body is crimped with steep obligation, sewing and canning, hoes and mules. Sometimes life is a sequence of departures, sometimes a destruction. What weather did Emma enter when the judge divulged the boots and spines of his savage decision? What stride could she have walking home? What month after love, after month after month? Here it is Sunday, watching the leaves, the sun going down.
That's the lyric brilliance of Lauren Camp. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. Well, rounding out this terrific night of poetry is the very gifted Carolyn Joyner. She's a local poet who uses contemporary traditional forms to examine life's themes. Her work has been featured in various literary magazines and anthologies, among them Revise the Song, work celebrating the writing of Gwendolyn Brooks. She's been in Pleiades, Obsidian, Gathering Ground, Beyond the Frontier, and our own local Beltway Poetry Quarterly. She is a former Writers Corps instructor, a volunteer poetry workshop leader for the DC Public Library, and the River of Words Community Project. She has a Master's of Arts degree in creative writing from Johns Hopkins University and is a Cave Canem Hurston Wright Foundation Fellow. She has been awarded Artist Fellowship grants from the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts and the DC Commission on Arts and Humanities. Carolyn Joyner's poems, while lyrical and evocative, can come around and hit you with a blast of simple, honest truth. So let's hear now from Carolyn Joyner.
Greetings. Okay. Greetings and many thanks to WordWorks and the WordWorks team, as well as Hiram Larew, who extended the personal invitation to present tonight. I wanted to start with a poem that was inspired by the former DC Poet Laureate Dolores Kendrick, but it's about Gwendolyn Brooks, and it's entitled The Now of Gwendolyn Brooks. Like a full moon in winter, her light comes inside, gives breath to voice speaking behind plain folk eyes, to song humming sway at their core. Long-limbed words with big souls, a collective embrace, armoring. There's no looking up or looking down on her charted journey, just the challenge of being human, assorting humanness. Soon I'll be done with the troubles of the world, soon. We dance, stride, gallop the idioms, rhythmic riffs resonant in portraits of young men dangling hope by the foot. But they cool, real cool. The bourgeois raining condescension on the poor, that old yellow pair sharing broken dreamed devotion. She seats us in kitchenette buildings, gives us a whiff of hallways overripened garbage after strutting our stuff down Bronzeville streets with Satin Leg Smith. We neighbor with a young girl named Annie Allen, grow into adulthood with her. Black urban poor skin slips on easily, reshapes truths that speak of our own, reach into modernity's chest, illuminated like a full moon in winter. This next poem is for Hiram Larew. So Hiram Larew, and actually all writers who grapple with the tempestuous muse. It's the title is the name of the muse, the music and lyric poetry in classical myth, Euterpe. It's after Marianne Moore. I better put my glasses on. Euterpe lifts the fog of marigold mist as if it were a window shade, rides the winged horse of song, or maybe death, strides the wide-stepped march of love, the fury in lust's swift rush to surrender. When she chooses to appear, I tilt my head, open my ear to absorb her vibrant resonance, or else she'll take herself some other place, play hide and seek hard to get. And then I can't repose in sacred waters. Let her music's whisper transform thoughts she inspires. Her lyres sound out their pattern, lure me to find them voice. I bathe her in ambrosia, get her to unwind so that tomorrow and the day after, she will prevail. Set me to sail toward figurative imagery. At times, she can be a wrong-headed woman, ignoring my plea to leave her icy caverns, bring her creative might to deepen the insight I long to have. No, her visits are not on cue. She rolls in on her chariot only when my attention's totally rapt and I combat distractions. Her jealousy rides high in wild, tempestuous skies, and I refuse to rile it up. I charm her with my own bush magic instead. Ensure this coy mistress is always visited. That's after Marianne Moore. The other poems that I've selected to share are from a manuscript I am shopping around, as I mentioned to Henry, entitled Bone Through Skin. And it's most of them are in celebration of the life of my son. And the first is called Imagining Warrior. It's after Lucille Clifton, actually. Imagine him big framed, packed tight, standing a head above his henchmen. Imagine him wearing an extra large boar's tusk helmet, untouched by fury's gusts, his warm bathwater self suited under armor, palming the might of its hand in yours, rugged smile flashing the small gap in his front teeth. Imagine his oak tree legs unyielding to force, clearing thick walls, high fences on a fine steed, saddle made especially for him. Imagine him stumbling upon a narrow tunnel he's compelled to enter, believing its end holds light, finding only deeper darkness, surprise attack, fierce battle, being pummeled pitilessly day after every day, all of his body parts laid open. Imagine him using bone as spear, gristle as shield, while sitting tall in his saddle, not tumbling from his horse, never giving up. Imagine his mother witnessing. Here's another. This one is called At Dusk. He loved dogs. I loved the look he gave when he saw them. He would float free of time. I loved to watch him float, cross over into their world of short legs, long heads, droopy ears, brawny shoulders. The wounded and neglected who never get walked. Therapeutic dogs, like Molly in his hospital room. It's been more than 5 years. More than 5 years since sun eyeballs moon hands day off to dusk. I take my seat on the front porch stoop. Dogs appear. Seeing eye dogs with violet fairy wings. Standing up like men. Happy. Leaping into their shadows. They beam, don't bark. Wear his face. A few years ago, we had a exhibit at the National Gallery of Art here in Washington. And it was a very extensive exhibit for Gordon Parks, a very well-known photojournalist, but not just a photojournalist. He was a Renaissance man. So he did it all, including poetry. And I wrote this sonnet for Gordon Parks. It's called Sonnet for Gordon Parks. He says he's lived in so many different skins, he can't be claimed by anyone. Attempts to keep him trapped inside himself all failed. He danced the lyric of Olatunji's drum, drank deep the cool of Blue Nile waters, then launched those proud, undaunted journeys into every tool shop of his mind. The 60s riots came. When asked why this, he simply said, "I'll show you." And so he did. With photographs and oils, journalism and concertos, the learning tree and shaft, poetry. This man, a well of all the arts, of making beauty, his patron goddess's long searching, devotion to his restlessness. It all started with a camera someone had pawned. And also from the manuscript, I did a crown of sonnets in that manuscript. And what I've done is just excerpted 3 of them that, I'll share. It's called the Damon Letters, the crown of broken sonnets. Did death tell you it would hold its greedy hand on your throat, or did it sneak in, surprise you? Did the voice inside your chest announce its coming? Were you asked to let go, walk away from yourself, or did you declare you were done? Just before dawn broke open, you left. Heart bucked and fluttered, you collapsed, floated down into yourself. The air held a lingering, and then the unexpected. Your gaping mouth became a closed-lipped smile. Your face pulsed light as if 1,000 candles were lit beneath. I'll never know what you saw upon your death. Could it have been Eliot using your glimmer to proclaim, "In my end is my beginning"? Could you have seen T.S. Eliot using your glimmer to proclaim, "In my end is my beginning"? From disharmony's forked tongue, many questions. Going sane feels like crazy, like mine traveling back to the cramped ambulance ride across town to hospice. Christmas music mixed with the smell of death wafting the air, the driver teasing you about a holiday tip. We couldn't banter. You weak and fragile, me pressed under heartache's iron foot, eyes fixed in terror, both of us in numb facade. And then nurses lining the entranceway, smiling and waving welcome at us in the hall, like we'd come to a vacation resort. Nurses waved welcome, as if we'd come to a vacation resort. At first, black fog, white noise, gaggle of moving mouths, black blank faces. Everything hushed inside my head, all of us actors in a silent movie. I kept my eyes from you. Forced tepid greetings, feigned help with settling you in bed. Sure hands turned on oxygen, adjusted stomach's prison of a tube. You'd never hold fork or knife again. Hunger lost to disease, but you had no room to give it notice. Survival swallowed you. Reduced what mattered to sponging your parched mouth, chapped lips, soothing open sores, getting the pillows just right under your legs. I suppose that's all, unless we have enough time for another poem. Thank you. And thanks to everyone.
Thank you, Carolyn Joyner. Let's give a big applause to Carolyn Joyner. And let's remember Hiram Larew and Lauren Camp, our three, and let's not forget T.A. Niles. And so here we are. I would like to say, I think we have a few minutes for our interrogator in chief, Karen Alanier, to ask a few questions of these poets. Karen, would you like to do that?
Okay,
Oh.
I was thinking that all of these wonderful poets could address the subject of character as an individual person, because each of you had some aspect of character. And I wondered whether you might consider at some point in the future writing plays. Anyway, Hiram, you in particular came from a memoir side, and I could see your character very clearly. Any thoughts on that?
Thanks, Karen. I tend to write a few pieces, not many, but a few pieces in other people's voices.
Mhm.
I was raised in central, kind of a little bit rural, but also cityfied Virginia, where there was a soft, I guess you'd say, Southern accent in the air, and a rich arrangement of wordology. And I can't help but think that sometimes my poems hanker back to those days. One of the ones that TA read this evening was a bit in that mode, and some of the other pieces in the collection are as well. I've never taken a hand to or keyboard to thinking about or writing about a play, but I'd love to hear if Lauren or Carolyn or TA has been so inclined. Thanks, Karen, for the question.
Mhm. TA, do you want to say anything additional, or shall we go to Lauren at this point?
I say we go to our poets.
Okay, Lauren, could you address the question?
I have never thought about playwriting, but I think about character a lot, and I don't think about it as character. I think about it more as psychological makeup, the psychology of the person, and I'm very often interested in that. That's my educational background, and I think that's what drives much of what I write about people, including myself, but about anybody, is why did someone do this? Why might someone have done this? So if I had any space in my mind and my schedule, maybe I would go into writing a play, but poetry is all consuming for me.
Yes. Well, thank you, Lauren. Carolyn, what say you about the subject of character and play?
Well, I'll say that I did attempt to write a play at one point, only because I was in a workshop at the museum with Jennifer Nelson, who has done a lot of plays around town, directed. And we were doing basically what we do when we do ekphrastic poetry, but we were asked to try our hands at a play. And I did. I can tell you it's very different writing and trying to get your story out through the lines that folks were speaking was a big, big challenge. So I'm kind of like Lauren and Hiram. I think that poetry is more my thing than that. But I can tell you when you think that it might be a little easier than it is, but it is not. It is really, really a challenge to do that. So I only tried that one time.
I think that's an interesting person that you were trying that with, because Jennifer has a sister who is a very well-known
That's
poet,
right, Marilyn Nelson.
Yeah, so I think that you were in very good hands.
Yep, yeah, we were.
And Karen, you as a poet have written plays, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so you have bridged that divide, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I've gotten the best of all help because Grace Cavallari has been my guru on that subject, and she has written, more than 26 plays and had them produced in New York and all of that. So I think, hopefully it was a question that touched a little, nerve in each of you, and you'll think about it in the future. Anyway, Henry, thank you so much for the opportunity to ask the questions. I don't know that we have any additional time for more, but I'm turning it back to you.
Okay, I think we've come down to the end of this. I would like to just do a couple more things. One thing is I've just put into the chat our WordWorks YouTube channel. A recording of this event will most likely appear sometime tomorrow if you want to see it and pass it around and share it. Another thing I'd like to do is I would like to acknowledge Grace Cavallari, the Maryland's 10th Poet Laureate. How about giving us a wave there? Yay, yay. Yes, indeed. And I will also say that I hope that everybody enjoyed this evening's readers, and we'll extend your enjoyment to purchasing the books. And I've put the link in there several times tonight, and letting others know about this series. Please join us on Monday, October 4, 2021, when Cafe Muse Online will present our own Cafe Muse team member, Leah Johnson, with Kiki Petrosino. And she will be back here again with PvP, and we'll be back here on October 20, 2021 with PvP and a special program dedicated to the anthology, This Is What America Looks Like. So until that time, until those events, I want to say good night and stay safe.